But I do know that J.D. Vance and Pete Hegseth were in attendance, so this is how I think the planning started.
Well, you sure are buying a whole mess of holy water for 2 people.
Yeah, we like to get fucked up and do fucked up shit, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I like to get fucked up too.
Welcome to another episode of Ask a Marine. I am your host, Krangus, the most rootinest, tootinest, most toilet splashing, splendiferous Marine this side of the Gulf of America. This week I'm going to talk about something that's a little bit more near to my heart, which was the live fire exercise that made a 155 Mike explode right over the Interstate 5 in California, right outside of Camp Pendleton.
It's the only way we have to travel around here.
Right next to the nuclear boobs.
Whatever Trump does is...
This is near and dear to me because I actually served in Camp Pendleton myself. For those of you wondering, I did serve at 1st Intelligence Battalion, which is located on 13 area of Camp Pendleton. So, once again, I'm going to be dissecting everything that happens from the perspective of a Lance Corporal in the Marine Corps. So, let's start with the facts. On October 18th, the U.S. Marine Corps conducted a live fire training exercise in celebration of our 250th birthday. Now, this exercise consisted of a bunch of motarded ass shit.
Motard, a Marine so infatuated with the Corps he can no longer do sex with girls.
Including an amphibious assault,
amphibious vehicles storming the shore,
some airstrikes, and the thing that we're going to be focusing on is they did an artillery exercise using howitzer M777s with 155 Mike rounds, and one of them blew up over the Interstate 5, where probably it's one of the busiest interstates in the country, honestly.
It's the only way we have to travel around here.
So let me show you how they did it. So this is Camp Pendleton here, and then this is the interstate. And right here near the beach is where they fired into the base, across the interstate and across the Amtrak rails that go through Southern California. Now, to the people who don't know how a howitzer works or how indirect fire works, let me explain.
Stand by! Fire!
Indirect fire is used for when you have dinguses over there, but you can't shoot them directly, so you gotta lob it at them. And again, what we used here was a howitzer M777, which this is what they look like when a 155 millimeter is used. So imagine you're driving to work just as a civilian, and all of a sudden that happens.
Unforgivable.
By the way, I've never really been around training for artillery purposes. I have been around training for mortars, and buddy, let me tell you one thing. If you ever see a mortar get misfired, it is terrifying. Now, as a guy that was stationed at Camp Pendleton, let me tell you, Camp Pendleton itself is one of the largest, if not the largest, Marine Corps base in the world. It's roughly the size of Rhode Island. It's a huge place. There are always live fire exercises just for training purposes aboard Camp Pendleton. But we specifically have ranges for that. I really do not know any logistical or logical reason for the U.S. Marine Corps to need to fire howitzers from the other side of the interstate and into the base. That is the part that I don't understand. Now, the CHP, which is the California Highway Patrol, there's a division officer there named Tony Coronado that announced, like, hey, and he's also a former Marine. I don't know if he was stationed there or not, but he said, like, hey, we know that the Camp Pendleton does live fire exercises all the time, but it's not normal that they do them like over the interstate that people travel on.
We were under the understanding that we're going to close I-5 up to 80,000 vehicles on Friday, tomorrow, and Saturday, and then they seem to have backed off on that.
And I know from first-hand experience, because I lived there, that, yeah, we never had an incident where we were like doing live fire over the interstate. That's crazy. I mean, you could just do it on base, assuming the desert tortoises aren't invading.
We are stewards of the land, and the Environmental Office tries to promote that ideal. And in order for us to be able to operate on this land, we have to consider our impacts on the tortoise because of the Endangered Species Act.
So in attendance of this celebration of Motardation were, of course, Vice President Vance, who got out as a corporal, kind of like me.
My service in the Marine Corps was a huge part of my life. I would not be here today. I would not be the Vice President of the United States. I would not be the man I am today were it not for those 4 years that I served in the Marine Corps.
And Secretary of War Pete Hegseth.
You are set apart for a distinct purpose. You kill bad guys and break things for a living.
And at least J.D. Vance knows his audience, because he had this to say to the Marines in the crowd.
Of course, because if we don't pay our enlisted Marines, every bar in Southern California is going to go out of business.
You goddamn right.
First you fight for right and freedom.
Other veterans are also here, showing their pride.
Now, the first thing that comes to mind as a Lance Corporal in the Marine Corps is that this is a Saturday, and it is the Saturday of a pay period. Now, let me explain to the civilians what this would have been like for every Lance Corporal aboard. Attending one of these live fire exercises, especially on a Saturday, is the same as those mandatory fun days that your work has ever made you do. So it's kind of like when your boss makes you go to a bowling event on Saturday just so you have to watch him get sloshed off of $5 margaritas all night and then eventually sexually harass one of the secretaries. I'm telling you right now, all them Marines do not want to be there right now.
First you fight for right and freedom.
Other veterans are also here, showing their pride.
And to all the crusty asshole veterans that keep talking shit in my comments about, oh, you're not really a Marine, you're a pathetic excuse. Go put your give me attention hat on and go to the Cracker Barrel and yell at the manager about your 10% veteran discount. Out of here with that trash. Because you know damn well when you actually serve and you were a PFC or a Lance Corporal and they made you do these mandatory fun events, the only thing you was thinking about doing was going outside of base and getting you a beer and having somebody touch your pee-pee. Hell, didn't even have to be a lady. And you know I'm telling the truth, Grandpa. Take it up with Chesty. Now, I haven't really been able to do any research on who specifically was the person that said, hey, this is a good idea. But I do know that J.D. Vance and Pete Hegseth were in attendance, so this is how I think the planning started.
Well, you sure are buying a whole mess of holy water for 2 people.
Yeah, we like to get fucked up and do fucked up shit, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I like to get fucked up too.
Now, here's my biggest takeaway on this. The Marine Corps birthday is actually November 10th. Now, I'm not saying that we don't do celebrations around that date. We typically don't do big birthday celebrations a month in advance. So that begs the question, why did we choose October 18th to do this exercise outside of the largest Marine Corps base in the country? What other thing was happening that day that might have made people decide this was a good day?
Massive crowds marching in No Kings rallies through some of America's largest cities, like New York, Chicago, Boston, and Los Angeles, and also in deep red Republican areas.
Oh, that's right, the Pokemon revolution.
Now, when officials try to shift focus to mandating diversity quotas, or they try to inject partisan politics into the American armed forces, they impede the Marine Corps' ability to do its best work.
Now, let me explain the Marine Corps birthday. There are a lot of traditions behind the Marine Corps birthday, and they all involve alcohol. What we typically do on the Marine Corps birthday is the Marine Corps Ball, which, if you don't know, it's kind of like the Marine Corps is a lot like high school. You spend 4 years in, you think about what you're going to do when you get out, and every year there's a prom, or in this case it's called the Marine Corps Ball. And it's your one chance of the year to go out and get in your dress blues, which you can be a 3 and look like a 7, wearing that thing. Whatever unit you're with is typically going to pick somewhere as nice as they can get within budget. My unit actually got the entire Marine Corps band from ever using the Queen Mary as a destination for the Marine Corps Ball. Now, outside of all the debauchery that my own friends conducted, I wasn't here for this story, but the story goes that some of the senior commanders in our unit, whenever the bar closed down and called last call, they locked arms and bulldozed the bar over. So the Queen Mary doesn't like us anymore. And that's also another thing I'd like to point out. People in San Diego in general hate the U.S. Marines. And it's because we're pretty notorious for going into bars and tearing shit up.
You kill bad guys and break things for a living.
During my time in service, it really wasn't uncommon to walk into a bar that said no colors allowed and also no Marines. So causing a big-ass traffic jam in one of the busiest interstates in the country isn't going to help our favor with the local population, I'll tell you that. But as far as the traditions go, every Marine Corps ball has a few things in common. There's always a cake. You always get the oldest Marine in the room and the youngest Marine in the room to cut the cake, which a few years ago I did a Marine Corps ball where we found out that the oldest Marine in the room and the youngest Marine in the room were both dating. But there's usually some kind of a dignitary speaker, like a general or maybe somebody that won the Medal of Honor. There's always some kind of person. They always read the General John A. Lejeune message from like 100 years ago, and then the current Commandant's message, which in modern times has been in the form of a YouTube video. So here's the thing about this whole celebration. That video hasn't even come out yet. The Commandant hasn't even addressed the Marine Corps birthday yet. So scheduling this on the same day of a protest, which by the way led to no violence, it just tells me that this is literally designed to be a show of force to anybody that would oppose the will of Donald J. Trump. And look, like I've said before, I'm not a liberal, but I'm not going to bow down and suck the dick of this MAGA movement that's been going on in the past few years.
Now, when officials try to shift focus to mandating diversity quotas, or they try to inject partisan politics into the American armed forces, they impede the Marine Corps' ability to do its best work.
I mean, I agree with that. So in the future, don't use the Marine Corps to make a political statement against your rival, bitch.